what's your sexuality? People often assume that I'm somewhat sapphic, and there is a part of me that kind of appreciates that people perceive me as not being straight. But unfortunately, I've been cursed to exclusively be attracted to men. I identify as heterosexual, and that is a label that I use on myself that sometimes people disagree with. Why? Because I am a transgender woman. And for some people, transgender women should exist outside of the scope of heterosexuality. To me, sexuality is very personal, and I don't really particularly care if you don't like the label I use for myself. It's the label that communicates to the people who have a chance to get into my bedroom a lot clearer what I'm attracted to and what I'm not. I ask that question and start this conversation because that's kind of the topic of this video and this conversation. Whether or not sexuality is something personal or something that's communally decided, there is always a conversation about what is the sexuality of the men who have an interest in transgender women. That's been the basis of a conversation that TS Madison recently had with Nene Leakes, and I wanted to start this conversation up yet again. In the previous years, when I've had this conversation, I had not lived in a large city. I had not lived around so many younger Gen Z trans folks. So I have a little bit more of a nuanced answer, but I'm going to be predominantly speaking from my own experiences. And I feel the need to predicate this entire video on that because I know from my own experiences that many of the conversations that happen online about this topic don't seem to align with my experiences. But anyway, I am getting ahead of myself as I always seem to do. Hi, my name is katblaque, and I like to think that I make content for introspective hot people. And if you're here, I'll assume that's you. And if you're brand new here, you know exactly what to do if this video pleases you. You just click my button and join me right here on the channel. Now, TS Madison is someone that I've known of for a very, very long time. Interestingly enough, TS Madison is someone who, God, back in the olden days, the trans community on YouTube used to have a lot of criticism for, because TS Madison, for those of you guys who may not know this, came onto the scene as the big dick bitch. She was a sex worker, and she was a very notorious sex worker. And I have to be honest, because I have shifted over the years, my feelings have shifted about TS Madison over the years. I have a great appreciation for her. And I think that it's been amazing to see TS Madison rise as a content creator, period, as a figure, period. I think that what she's doing with her resources is really great. And it's been especially inspiring as a former sex worker to see a former sex worker take their platform and use it for good. But nonetheless, let's see the conversation that started all of the controversy.
Do you only know gay men?
Well, I don't date gay men.
Well, okay. Well, I you know when you guys be saying that, that's weird.
Why?
Because what do you mean you don't date gay men? Because if he is sleeping with you and sleeping with a woman, he's something.
He's not gay.
What is he?
He's definitely not gay.
He's bi?
Listen, because if a man come in here and he looks at me and you,
Yeah. What is
and he likes women.
Yeah, because he doesn't know.
And if he does know, he likes women.
Okay.
Now,
but what is he?
That would possibly, it's a possibility.
He's bisexual?
He could be bi or he could be pan.
Okay, guys.
You know, a lot of men are pan, but they don't say anything. Like
I don't want to run into them. I don't want to date him.
Nene, if you've dated,
I need you to like
Nene, if you've
Hello
dated,
Kitty all the time.
If you've dated men,
yes.
If you've dated men, there's a possibility in your life that
he's been with a man.
He's been with something.
What do you mean he's been with something?
He's been outside. I mean, here's the thing. I know that women consider trans women men because we were born male, but there's a difference between being man and male.
I get it. But you have your part.
That's correct.
So he can love you and think you're so beautiful, and I want to sleep with you.
There are men who deal with me that won't touch my parts. Anytime you see
But does he know it's there?
Yeah, he knows it's there. I'm not hiding it.
Oh, you're not?
No.
I mean, that
'Cause,
wouldn't,
listen,
that wouldn't make any sense.
Well, I've had gentlemen to tell me, hey, put a pill over that. And I'm like, not the nigga for me. You don't have to touch it and deal with it, but I'm not hiding shit from you.
Okay, wait a minute. We got to go back and figure this out.
Yeah.
So the man...
Roll the tape.
Yeah, so the man going to be sleeping with me and you? I don't want to talk to him no more.
You don't?
Why the hell you going to sleep with me then going to sleep with you for?
Men like variety.
Oh, please. I don't want him.
Shit, I mean, hey, but it's happening.
I'm over
it.
it.
But these things, this is what women...
That's why I'm not even dating.
Okay. So I understand why a lot of biological women feel this way. And now, before we get into this, I'm going to use the phrase biological women throughout this video because I know that the predominant audience for Nene Leak's show is Black women. In my observation, and I don't know if it's just because I'm Black, a lot of the content I get is Black, it may just be my feed, but this is a particularly contentious conversation within the Black community specifically. And I do find that a lot of Black biological women tend to operate from a place of sensitivity. They're very sensitive. And I think rightfully we'll also get into that about terms that they feel will take away their womanhood or will question their womanhood. And for some of these women, they are particularly sensitive to hearing the term cis. So just like I would try to speak delicately to white people, I'm going to try to speak delicately to Black women, understanding the sensitivity, okay? So that's why we're going to be using the language, right? So anyway, TS Madison did respond to some of the discourse people were having about her on her social media. Okay, since the men who truly identify as gay or homosexual like men, tell me, how many trans women do you date? What a lot of biological women, I guess, don't really understand is that by virtue of me existing the way that I do, I'm not going to attract men who are attracted to men. I'm going to consistently draw the attention of men who identify as heterosexual. That's just the numbers. The numbers are that most men who are going to approach me are going to be men who identify as straight. And this is an experience I have all the time. I'll go out into the world, right? A man will be attracted to me. And, I'll just be very honest. Men hit on me a lot. Especially because I go out by myself all the time. I go out alone a lot. I'm sort of a person who is a lone wolf quite frequently. And so because of that, I end up getting approached quite a bit by men.
TS Madison preys on two types of men.
Oh, no.
Yes, I said prey as in predator.
Oh, my God.
I didn't stutter. The first type of man is the straight, masculine man who has never experienced relations,
oh my God,
or a romantic relationship with a man or a trans woman.
Oh my God.
He is curious. He has thought about it, but he is terrified of being outed and shamed. But he is curious. And what T.S. Madison would do with this type of man is she will use her womanhood, her aesthetic of, her feminine appearance to lure this man and seduce him and have conversations to pick apart his mental, mind fuck him, seduce him, to get him to drop his guard so that he can have his first romantic experience with a trans woman or gay man.
Bitch, okay, I have to stop there. There's like 5 more minutes to this video. We're not going to watch them. The way that people talk about this is so hilarious. Like, maybe we're different. Maybe we're just different types of women, right? But when I leave the house, I do not find it hard to get male attention. Male attention is a given, in my opinion. It is a baseline. And it's so fascinating to me how biological women, I guess, imagine that trans women have to manipulate and wild and seduce and all these other things, because it's like, Actually, no, we just have to go outside. You know, like, I don't need to manipulate men into my bedroom. I've never had to manipulate men into my bedroom, right? It's not a thing that needs to be done. And I always think it's weird how, you know, a lot of you guys, you imagine, maybe because of your own sex lives, that force is necessary, right? That trans women would prefer to be with men who have never been with a transgender woman, who have never been with a man before, and they are particularly excited at the idea of getting them to switch over. And girl, let me just tell you, that couldn't be further from the truth. A lot of times for me personally, and I know that this is a me thing, not a universal thing, if I meet a man who's never had an experience with a transgender woman, I'm usually not interested in him. Typically, if a man has never been with a trans girl, that means a couple of different things. That means that he is probably going to put a lot of weight on our interaction. It also means that he is likely going to maybe feel from our experience that it's not something that he is interested in. And I don't really like to be in that position. Like, personally for me, I disconnect from a man. I want it to be something other than because I'm trans. So when it comes to the men that I share intimacy with, I always tell them that I'm transgender before I do. And I always make sure that before we do share intimacy, that these men are either experienced with transgender women or are not fazed by my body. And that's really important to me because at the end of the day, I want to have an equitable relationship. I've had a lot of experiences in my youth where I was dating someone, they weren't super accepting of me being a trans woman, and it was like an endless game of, you know, chicken. I am a certain type of gal who likes a certain type of dude. I like aggression. I like strength. I like confidence. If you don't have it, you don't measure up. You're not tall enough to ride this ride, right? That's just the way I feel. And I personally have a hard time getting that from a man who's never been with a trans woman. Men who have never been with transgender women typically have a lot of insecurity about what's happening. They typically are very tepid or iffy, and I just don't like that energy. I really don't. The funny part about it too, you know, we end up having these really intense debates about men and their sexuality and this and that, and I have to let you know, biological women who are in my audience, dick is abundant and low value, baby. The way that a lot of biological women like to talk about this, you would think that there is a drought, that dick is just so rare, so hard to find. And I can't, like, I don't know, maybe it is because I'm trans, but like, dick is abundant and low value, baby. I don't understand why we're fighting over men, straight men especially. That's the thing too. A lot of times, biological women like to imagine that when I say that I mostly date straight men, I'm like just trying to reinforce my gender or something. Like, they think that I'm trying to just say, oh, I'm a woman and these men who date me are straight, obviously, because of that. And I couldn't accept like the alternative reality where someone was bisexual or gay or pan or whatever. And it's like, no, I feel the way that I do because my experiences are that these men are not attracted to anyone other than women. And it's also the case that I personally don't prefer heterosexual men. My experience with the average man who identifies as heterosexual is that he is deeply insecure. And if I'm being frank with you, it is so hard for me to be attracted to a man who isn't strong in his convictions and isn't existing on his own 2 feet. You know, I cannot really enjoy most of the relationships I've had with heterosexual men because so many straight guys are like obsessed with maintaining image, right? And so I tend to prefer dating men who are bisexual or pansexual. And you know, let me talk about my experience with bisexual men really quickly, because every time we have this conversation, people always want to say that trans women should just date bisexual men. But my experience with bisexual men is that typically bi men are not necessarily open to dating trans women. That's just my experience. When I've interacted with bisexual men, they are more likely to fetishize me and sort of see me as the best of both worlds. A lot of the bi men that I've tried to date essentially have the attitude of their bisexuality being attraction to biological women. Sorry, didn't mean to say a slur. Biological women and biological men. That's the way that they personally feel. And that's just been my experience. On the flip side, when I date straight men tend to be a little bit more eager to just see me as a woman, right? Straight men tend to be like, you're a woman, right? They don't tend to want the like interesting, complex, queer, whatever from me. They tend to just see me as a woman. And personally for me, because again, I am a straight person, I tend to be more compatible with straight men. And most of my long-term relationships have been with heterosexual men. Now, I think this might be the perfect point in the video to talk about how many of my experiences are informed by the type of transgender person that I am, right? Trans people come in all different shapes, sizes, and experiences. There are transgender women who spent a decent amount of time in their lives presenting as gay men and existing within gay social and romantic groups. I was not someone who had the opportunity to do that because I transitioned as young as I did. So I've never identified as a gay man. I identified as queer, I identified as genderqueer, but I have never identified as a gay man. And so for me personally, my entire dating history is only in transition with people seeing me as a girl. That's all I know. And so for me personally, I know that I'm very culturally straight. That's part of why it's so fascinating to me that people think that I'm sapphic, because even though I can see that a little bit, because I do get a lot of inspiration from the sapphic women in my life, especially right now. And frankly, I am the token straight girl in my friend group, so I do get that. But I am very culturally heterosexual. It is unfortunately a very strong part of who I am. And the trajectory of my last 7 years of life living in Los Angeles has been trying to go against that, because when I was stealth in my 20s, I was very focused on distancing myself from everyone LGBT. I really didn't have the desire to connect with people who were LGBT. But I say all that to say that culturally, I'm not very queer. So typically, if I interact with people who are, I don't usually connect with them in the same way that I do with heterosexual men. And that's kind of the fascinating thing too, is like, in terms of the men that I tend to get along with and I tend to date, I tend to just vibe a lot more with heterosexual men. Mostly just because I am somewhat of a traditional person in the context of my relationships. I spend most of my time, this is gonna disappoint a lot of you, but I was a failing housewife in my 20s. I'm a bit better at it now. I spend most of my time when I'm not working taking care of my partner, and I'm very happy to do that, and I'm content with that. But because that's my approach to relationships, usually I end up being compatible with straight men. The few bi or pan men that I have kind of gotten close to dating, it has kind of become this thing where, because I am so culturally straight, it kind of ends up being a clash, because a lot of times bi/pan men have different expectations with relationships. Bi/pan men are not usually as eager to play a traditional role in a relationship. And I wouldn't say that I necessarily expect that, but I would say that I'm used to it. And so typically, if I do end up resonating with someone, it's usually a person who has that approach, right? Alexander was immediately taken by me. When I first met him, he didn't know that I was trans. He found out later, because I had made some Facebook post forever ago about it. I didn't think that I had made any posts about it on my private Facebook page, but he had seen one, and he was completely unfazed, right? Completely unfazed. He had never been with a transgender woman before, but he was really interested in me. I didn't perceive it. At the time, I just moved into a new apartment and I had a bunch of outlets that were broken in my house. And Alexander had offered to come over and fix my outlets. And I'll be honest, I'm really used to men doing nice things for me, so I didn't necessarily interpret it as him flirting with me. I just thought he was being nice and offering to help. But by the end of him fixing all of my shit in my apartment, he asked me out on a date. And we've been together ever since. It's been 5 years. He was attracted to me and we got along and we continue to get along and he continues to be attracted to me and it is what it is, right? And that's just how most of my relationships have gone. It's not this complex battle of labels. It's not this complex debate about masculinity. It's we get along, we're meshing well, and we date. Right? If someone said that Alexander wasn't straight, neither of us would care. But what's funny is when we go out in public, people are always telling us that we should have children. People are always telling us that we should have children. In the world that we go out and exist in, we are not seen as a queer couple. And that's the case for most of the relationships I'm in, right? Most of the men that I date do kind of follow a certain mold, I guess, of masculinity. So typically, you know, when people see us out and about, it's a relationship that makes sense. You know, it's not a relationship that really causes a lot of attention. Frankly, we get way more attention for us being an interracial couple. You know, Alexander, because I was his first transgender partner, there was a little bit of a learning curve for sure. But, you know, after 5 years, you know, that curve has definitely found its spot, you know, but and girl, the curve, bitch, if you've listened to the first video where I talked about him, I'll be right back. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. People always make the argument, of course, that because trans women are designated male at birth, that, you know, when cis men have sex with them, that's 2 males, you know? And you guys, look, I'm positive that if you walked up to all of my partners and were like, you're gay, they would not care. They would not care. Some of my partners are into men, right? Some of my partners are attracted to men, but most of them are not. Most of them are so not attracted to men that they don't even want anything to do with the genitalia. And TS Madison does mention this in the video. That is very common, right? Like a lot of the straight men who do like transgender women, they are going to kind of require that the woman have surgery or that she just like hide it, basically. I am someone who does not use their genitalia at all during sex. Like that's just not a part of it for me because first of all, I can't physically do it. All the things that those gals on Shemale Yum do, I can't do. Don't know that, don't experience that emotion. T.S. Madison did sex work, right? And I know that this may be shocking to some of you to hear, but porn is not real. Porn is not real. Now, T.S. Madison, from what I've seen, is indeed the big dick bitch, okay? So there's no denying that. But one of the things I think people don't quite understand, if you are someone who is designated male at birth and you take what most transgender women take for HRT, which is typically something to suppress your testosterone and then an estrogen to fill in the blanks, right? Literally. Then the natural result of that is that your genitalia shrinks and becomes not functional. And that works for me. I personally don't want to date a man who is fixated on my genitals. Like that's actually a really big part of my attraction to men is I really don't entertain men if they have a preference. So I always ask when men ask the question about whether or not I've had bottom surgery, if they have a preference. That's actually the way that I end up turning the question around. I ask if they have a preference. And typically if I know that they have a preference one way or another, I'm just not interested. I just don't have any particular interest. Like if they say that they prefer a trans woman's genitalia as pre-op, then I'm not interested. If they say that they prefer a cis woman's genitalia, then I'm not interested. If they say that they prefer post-op, I'm not interested. I like men who like women and don't particularly care about their genitalia. So typically, in my case of who I tend to connect with, I don't really connect with men unless they feel that way.
The same man that can sleep with a very unattractive woman facially because she has a big behind is the same man that'll sleep with a trainee because she has a big behind.
It's not untrue.
Argue with your mama. Because the common denominator is the ass. You don't care how ugly she is as long as she got that ass. You don't care what's in the front of that ass as long as she got that ass.
Not the misgendering. I'm dead. But she's not wrong. I mean, she's not wrong. Like, that's the thing too. Like, I know that this may be like a thing that a lot of biological women don't want to hear, but a lot of men are not particularly fixated on the front. They like the back. And I will actually say that for some men, they end up developing a preference for the back. And I don't know how to say this. How to say this in a way where I could probably still get monetized. Certain men have certain equipment that's more properly suited for the back, I'll just say. And I know that for some of those men, they end up having an interest in transgender women purely because of that. Because we like it in the back. Like, we actively do. A lot of biological women don't. And some men are really into that. And that's kind of one of the ways that they may arrive at their interest in transgender women, because they like that, and that's probably the most important thing to them. Also, a lot of times when we have this conversation, one of the things that comes up all the time, because people are always thinking about trans women as the one who gets rejected, so people are always making the argument of like, oh, some men want kids. And the sad thing that I think of when I hear that is like, how few of the men I've known in my life that have actually wanted children. Some men may end up preferring transgender women purely because they cannot get pregnant. I bring that up because a lot of people envision that one of the only reasons anyone could ever be attracted to a transgender woman is because of her genitalia. And I'll be honest, I think that for a lot of the people who are specifically looking for transgender women, that is what it is. But a lot of men also find themselves attracted to transgender women because there is no pregnancy risk. And for some men, that anxiety is so high that they would rather be with a very beautiful transgender woman and have zero risk than be with a very beautiful biological woman and have a little bit of risk. I've had more than just a few men tell me that. I think a thing that a lot of people may not exactly understand is that there are a lot of men who are attracted to women, but not necessarily attracted to their genitalia. And that's the thing that I think some people miss, right? Like, the way that biological women talk about this, straight men process attraction to women purely on the basis of genitalia, right? They are genitalia focused, they are sex focused, and that is 100% what their attraction is. When trans women kind of know that's not really the case. Trans women kind of know that men are very rarely just attracted to genitalia. They're usually attracted to other things. And this is a sidebar, but one of the things that makes me kind of sad in this conversation is that biological women never think that one of those things could be personality. Like, I get along with men very easily. I know that a lot of men are attracted to my personality, so I know that's part of why I end up getting a lot of attention and have the luck I do. But like, that's a thing too, right? Like, men are not often just attracted to your genitalia. And the thing that makes me kind of sad in this conversation is that it seems like so many biological women are like under the impression that they are. And it's sad to hear that. It's sad to register that so many biological women think that's what men are primarily attracted to. Now, are there men who are primarily attracted to that? Yes. But those men would probably also date people who may not be women, but have vaginas. Like, unfortunately, there are a lot of straight men who try to date pre-T trans men or non-binary people who are designated female at birth, who very much are the types of men who are attracted to genitalia regardless of gender identity. And I think what's funny to me about that is I know for a fact that many biological women would probably not look at a man who's a cis man who's in relationship with a trans man and say that they're heterosexual. I mean, they probably would not. Some would. But I imagine that you would probably feel the same way about a man who sleeps with a transgender woman that you would feel about a man who sleeps with a transgender man. And I kind of say that and point that out because if that's true, then is it really about the genitalia? Or are you just upset that this person who you're attracted to is attracted to trans people? And when I think about this, I think about a lot of people's feelings about race, because this also tends to be a very similar thing, right? There are some Black men who have no interest in dating me or having sex with me because they know that I sleep with white men. And there are white men who have similar feelings about white women, right? If they hear that you've ever been with someone outside your race, they're going to feel repulsed by that, right? Now, is that a feeling that exists without bias? Because similarly, white folks have indeed made the argument that Black people are inherently more disease-ridden, inherently more disease-prone. I mean, look at the HIV statistics, you just point that out. And would that be something that you would hear and immediately be like, oh, you know what? I am understanding of that because yes, by the numbers, Black women are more likely to have HIV than white women. Would you hear that? Would you digest that as something that exists outside of bias? Probably not. And so my issue is less so that there are biological women who don't like that the people they're attracted to may also be attracted to transgender women. It's more so that clearly there's this sense of supremacy that a lot of these biological women seem to want to be celebrated and reaffirmed. And I actually don't think that's necessary. I don't have an issue with biological women only wanting to be with biological men who are only attracted to biological women. I don't really have an issue with that. My issue in this conversation is that there's a disgust in the way that a lot of biological women talk about this that to me can't exist outside of bias. I definitely identify with being really careful about wanting to share your body with men who may be attracted to a gender outside of your own, because sometimes get the feeling that maybe these men are just trying to use you as a placeholder, essentially. And I think that's a really big anxiety for a lot of women. And I think there's a lot of reasons why that's a big anxiety for a lot of women. You don't want to waste your time. You don't want to waste your youth. You want to be with someone who really likes you. And you may feel that if a man is attracted to transgender women, that maybe he doesn't really like you. Maybe he really likes that. But the thing I had to sort of accept is that just because someone's attracted to something different than me doesn't mean that he's not attracted to me. And that I was in so many ways just giving myself anxiety by buying into that. The way that you guys talk about trans people, it's separate from your issues with men dating them, right? You talk about trans people as though they are so disgusting, so predatory, so terrible, right? You can't imagine that a trans woman could just meet a man who identifies as heterosexual. They could both get along and have a pretty normative relationship where they have a good sex life and they love each other. That is my experience throughout my life, right? It's just so fascinating to me. There's this insistence on something like that not existing. And then they think if they come to me and say, he's not straight, right? That means anything. At the end of the day, whatever these men label themselves as, they are going to be men who are attracted to me in the same way that they're attracted to you. And if that's a problem that you have, I really think it's worth questioning why that is. Questioning why it is that you're so offended that someone may look at us and be attracted to us both equally. It's, to me, really not that different from a man being attracted to me as a curvy woman and also attracted to a very skinny woman, right? There are definitely people who may say that the skinny woman is worth more than me as a curvy woman, but I'm not personally buying into the idea of these hierarchies. I'm personally not buying into the idea that I exist above or beneath someone. And I think once I do, that does dip into bigotry and not just my personal preference. I have to be honest, I've never seen a video of a woman talking about this who didn't seem absolutely miserable, you know? And if you want to live a life where you're constantly grading human beings on a scale, where you're constantly saying that you are above everyone else and you should be revered by all men who find you attractive above all other people, if you want to live in that world, live in that world. You sit there, interrogate these men, shame them for what they could be attracted to, call them sissies, call them gay, say that they're bisexual, do all these things because it's what you need to feel better about yourself. But I hope that at a certain point you eventually recognize that whether I, as a transgender woman, entertain the idea that these men are not straight, whether these men are actually gay or whatever, that this thing that you have within yourself where you constantly need to be better than another person is something that probably doesn't exist in just this conversation. It's an illness of supremacy that you probably do need to unpack at some point. It's an illness that will cause you to constantly look at human beings on a scale of which one is more or less valuable than the other. And at the end of the day, that is a tool that's been used to oppress all of us. And especially right now, as white nationalism is becoming louder and louder, we should try to liberate ourselves from the idea that any human being has more value than any other human being. And to me, that's really at the core of all of this. Anyway, that's food for thought. Let me know what you think in the comment box below. As per usual, I want to thank everyone who supports me over on Patreon. I want to give a shout out to the last 3 people who joined me over there. Shout out to Sarah Park, Adriana, and Meatstar. Thank you so much for joining me on Patreon, where I occasionally post exclusive content such as vlogs about work and my personal life. And I also post comment reply videos on here, as well as YouTube members. The big difference between YouTube members and my Patreon is that my Patreon is where I upload all of my vlogs, and my YouTube members is where I upload the extra comment response videos and also the archived videos that I have on my YouTube channel that I've recently released for my members only. By the time you guys see this video, you guys will have a lot of content to peruse through. So hopefully you guys do that. And if you do, please let me know. I would love to hear from you. Anyway, on that note, I will talk to you guys later. And as per usual, I want you to always remember and to never forget that you are beautiful and you are loved. Bye.